What's up, YouTube? It's your girl Crystal, and I am back with another review. Today I'm going to be reviewing the new Matilda movie musical. It is based on the book by Roald Dahl from 1988. Now, we millennials know the original Matilda movie that starred Mara Wilson, Danny DeVito, Rhea Perlman as the Wormwoods, and Mara Wilson was Matilda. Now, we loved and adored this sweet film about this young girl who grows up in a family that doesn't appreciate, doesn't respect her, doesn't really love her, right? They have another child, but they really were sad that they got a little girl. But this child was not any child. She had special abilities, she could move things with her eyes. And then later on, she started to be a little naughty and started to do some things to her parents when they would, tick her off. And rightfully so, that's fine. But I don't think she ever really used her powers for evil, more for good. She used them to chase away the iconic Miss Trenchbull from the school and to really bond with everyone's favorite teacher, Mrs. Honey. So that is the film from 1996. Now, this musical, I know Broadway and I believe London had the stage musical, which I've never seen, but I hear it's really awesome. Has a bunch of kids, about 12 kids, and then everyone is double cast, well, not double cast, but they have backup kids just in case of illness or, child labor laws, of course. So I hear the stage musical is absolutely awesome. So they adapted this into a movie musical, and it just came out on Christmas via Netflix in the US. It's been out, I believe, in the UK since November, and it got released here in the movies December 9th. I didn't go see it in the theaters. I simply saw it on Netflix on Christmas. It just felt like a Christmas movie, feel good, singing, dancing, all of the things. So let's start with who this musical stars. So it stars Alicia Ware, who is a Brit, a young child from London. Emma Thompson plays Miss Trenchbull, and the iconic Lashana Lynch is Mrs. Honey. Now, I know when her casting was first released, some people had some feelings like, oh, Miss Honey can't be Black. Why? Oh, you people are ridiculous. But I didn't know, I have to say, before Woman King, I wasn't aware of Lashana's previous movies or anything. I started to look her up after Woman King because I'm like, who is this woman that like killed everybody in this movie? But come to find out, she had shot Matilda the musical before Woman King. She had to change her voice to sound like a bird, and she had this really high-pitched voice to sound really sweet and angelic. And it's so beautifully done. So Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood are played by Stephen Graham and Andrea Riseborough. I hope I'm pronouncing their names right. Now the film, I will say, it starts off with Matilda, of course, in the children's unit. She's an infant, and they open it with a beautiful song. But they jump after that opening sequence. They jump all the way until she's, I believe, 9, to where we meet Miss Honey and another gentleman that are coming to her house and saying, "You're going to get fined. Your kid is not in school." That's one of the differences I wasn't too happy about versus the movie, because I believe in the movie we see a journey, right? Before we even meet Matilda at 9, when she starts to discover her special powers. We see Matilda as an infant spelling her name in spinach. That pisses off her mom. We see Matilda being left in the car when she's being taken from the hospital on the day they take her home. So we see, like, how bad these parents are. We see the journey. And then we see her, I believe, at 4 when she starts to read and she starts to go to the library and spend her days there. And then we meet Matilda at 9, and then, she gets these powers and all of these things. This movie did a lot of jumping for me, and I wasn't aware of why. I assume maybe because it's based on the musical, the stage musical, that they can't go through all of these um, time periods in Matilda's life because it's on stage. So I get that. But that's one thing I did miss opposed to the movie, because we really we were invested into Matilda as a child before we even saw her at 9. So I'm going to start off with my 5 favorite songs in the musical. First of all, I am not the musical person, so please forgive me. I am a huge, huge stage play and movie TV buff. Musicals are not really my thing. The only musicals I really like are like Dreamgirls or Sister Act. I like Pippin. There's very few musicals I really like. But this one is one of them, I will say. So I'll say that I love the school song, right? That's when we meet Matilda at 9 when she's first forced to go to school because Miss Honey and the gentleman comes and threatens her parents and says, "You're going to get a fine." All right, well, you're going to school. But you're going to this bad school with this awful headmistress named Miss Trunchbull, and she's evil and she has a real bad reputation. And so Matilda's like, okay. So she goes to the school. She has to have a uniform on and everything looks very strict and scary. So she comes in and she's greeted by these students, and there's a student with a red beret on, and she like leads this song. So it's the school song, and then they teach her like the alphabet, and it's really catchy. And then at the end, we see Miss Honey pop out and say, "Lavender, Miss Honey, come inside." So that's one of my favorites. Um, I also like Revolting Children, of course, that's later on when they, they do the big dance number. That's the one that's going around on social media, and everybody is putting Missy Elliott's, I think, Pass That Dutch or something under the song. And we're like, these kids are giving a hard 8 count. Like, I was so impressed by the dancing and choreography from these kids because I feel like kids sometimes they don't focus well or something like that, but like these kids were on it. They killed it. And there is a video out there where Netflix, I think, did a side by side of them in rehearsal versus what made it onto the screen. And they were killing it from the beginning with their mask on and everything. And I'm like, man, these kids are killing it. And it was just so well done. God bless the directors for putting all these kids together and making them, I don't know how they taught, if they taught them in groups, separate groups, and then brought them together at the end, but bravo, because I'm sure keeping track of hundreds of kids on set is not easy, but it looked so well done. I love Naughty, of course. Alicia Ware leads that one. Little bit naughty. Like, yes, we all get to be a little bit naughty. And that's when, she's gluing her dad's hat on and she's doing all these things. The peroxide, of course, changing his hair to green, all of these things. But I will say these next 3 songs are really what touched my little heart and made my allergies act up a bit. When I Grow Up, the kids, of course, started off with all these things they want to do when they grow up, be a pilot, be a doctor, lawyer, all of these things. And then Miss Honey comes in at the end and she has her bike and she's saying, "When I Grow Up." And I'm like, oh, it touched my little heart. Um, My House. That is Miss Honey's moment. I think that is the moment of the musical to me. I don't know if that translates on stage as well, but My House, I've heard of the song because I think Heather Headley always does a rendition of it when she performs around the world with symphony orchestras. She's always doing that song. And I never really knew where it came from. I just knew it was a beautiful song, but now it makes sense in the musical because Miss Honey at that moment is saying, I live in this little shed, but I have a roof and I have walls to keep the cold out and I'm safe, right? Because we know she didn't grow up in that manner. So it's such a beautiful song and Lashana has to actually cry through it. And I always want to ask my musical theater friends, like when someone or when your director is asking you to do this emotional song, how do you not crack? Like, how does your voice not crack up? And if anyone knows, please drop down in the comments and let me know because I think that's such a cool skill to have that you can connect your song to emotion because in regular dialogue, yeah, we can cry through some dialogue and we'll crack up and it's all right. But in a song, you have to keep that, I feel like, clarity of your voice so we can hear the words and the lyric and everything. But if you're crying through it, that is a skill to not break and to not completely just fall apart. And when she was emoting through the song, you didn't hear, I don't know if it was dubs over and she sang over the dubs or whatnot, but I'm sure in the studio she had to probably emote as well to get that feeling through the soundtrack. And it was just so beautiful. The lyric of, it's not much. but it's mine, or I'm sorry, it's not much, but it's just enough. It's so beautiful. And as someone that is currently, having some issues with my own home, I really felt that song. Like sometimes I take for granted that I do have a home, that I'm not homeless or out on the street, or, I have heat, I have water, I have all these things to keep me warm, especially now in the winter, being in in Michigan where, the other day it was -2. But, sometimes I complain about these things that I want to fix up in my home, but I have enough, and that song is just so beautiful and it helps you remind that you are more fortunate than a lot of people. So bravo to the writers. I believe it's Tim Minchin that wrote the musical, that wrote the music. I'm sorry. The book was written by Dennis Kelly, but Tim mentioned the beautiful songs. I love My House, and I think it's just beautiful. And Lashana delivered. Her singing voice is so soothing and beautiful and calming. Something that we loved from the original Miss Honey, and for Lashana to come in and take that mantle and just add a little bit more, I think, story to that, because the original Miss Honey didn't sing. We just heard her tell her stories through dialogue, but it's something so beautiful about that song, My House. And then lasting, Still Holding My Hand. That's what ends the film, right? A little bit, where Miss Honey decides to take on Matilda, adopt her, and bring her into the home. And they live, happily ever after. And they have this sweet little scene where the camera's over them and they're holding hands. And it's just so beautiful. Um, if I had to give a rating out of 10, I would give this musical a 7, and mainly because of Miss Honey. I One thing I liked about the movie is that the 1996 version is that everyone had their moment, right? We rooted for Matilda. We saw her grow up from an infant all the way up to 9, 10, 11 until the adoption. But we also got more character from her parents. We understood a little bit more, maybe not why they were like that, but at the end when Miss Wormwood tells Matilda, like, all your life I've never understood you. And then at the end when they sign the adoption papers, it's like, you know what? We're not good to this little girl. Let's just sign these adoption papers. You know how they say, if you love something, you let it go. And I really thought that was an act of kindness that they did for her in the movie. The musical, I think, removed a lot of that story. And I know because it's a musical, it's about the music, but that's one thing I do have a gripe about with musicals. The dialogue is never as strong as the music. Only in a couple musicals, I feel like with Dreamgirls, I think the dialogue is equally as good because we get to hear the characters tell each other how they feel about each other through dialogue, and then they move to song. But in this one, I feel like a lot of story was left out and they just sang through it. Um, the musical is much darker than the original movie. And to some people that's fine, but for me, I wanted to root for Matilda. But I felt like when we first are introduced to her on the steps and she meets Miss Honey, she has a dark, I don't want to say energy, but there's something that's just not as innocent, I'm sure that's because of, of course, when you grow up in a hard life of 9 years, your parents don't love you. You're sleeping on, they put you in the attic away from everyone. They don't talk to you unless to berate you. I get that. But I think in the movie, Matilda still had that sweetness, that innocence about her. And then when she was pushed to use her powers or her or her naughtiness, she was pushed. Danny DeVito jamming his finger into her chest and saying, "I'm big, you're little, I'm right, you're wrong, there's nothing you can do about it." Of course, now I have to glue your hat to your head, and rightfully so. But I think her being naughty in the musical, we didn't see exactly why. We just knew, okay, her parents are awful and she's doing this, but I wanted to see the why behind it. Um, Also, when she gets to the school, yes, we know Miss Trunchbull is awful, but I feel like she uses her powers a little too soon, um, just to maybe say she has powers and she can use them for bad or good. Um, so yeah, I didn't know. I'm sure that's a choice on the stage, maybe on the stage musical as well, but I wanted a little bit more innocence from Matilda, I will say. I felt like she was being naughty for the sake of being naughty. There was no real reason why, or there was no um, dialogue to explain. It was just through song. And someone like me, I need to hear the why or see why exactly she's being naughty or she's going to start using her powers. Or maybe I just missed it. Drop down in the comments and let me know. Maybe the stage show has a little bit more explanation, but in the movie they cut down some things. Um, I thought Emma Thompson was wonderful as Miss Trunchbull, from the prosthetics, the makeup, the outfit. Like I'm like, man, Miss Trunchbull's been lifting weights up in this thing. Like she's a big woman, but I thought she was wonderful. The chokey scene is iconic because one of my favorite moments of the musical, sorry, is that when Miss Trunchbull comes in and she's like, I'm sick of y'all. Let's do a spelling bee. If you get a word wrong, uh, you're going to go into chokey. And so the kids are spelling it right. And then she gives this obnoxious word to this little girl, and the little girl tries to spell it and she gets it wrong. And so she's like, now it's time for the chokey. And they're like, no, no. And so all of the kids stand up to Miss Trunchbull at the moment. And they're all standing on their desk and they're like, dog, D-A-G, and they purposely are misspelling these words. And they're like, you can't put us all in the chokey. And she pulls a string and is like, aha, I gotcha. You thought I didn't have an answer for that. Now I have like 34 chokies up in here. So yeah, you're all going in there. And I'm like, oh, Miss Trunchbull was not playing. So I thought that was a cool difference between this Trunchbull and the original Trunchbull, because the original Trunchbull only had one chokey. It was scary too, honey. But this one, she she had some resolve for these children. Um, I'll also say I thought this was more Miss Honey's musical, to be honest. And I'm not mad at that because Lashana, I think, carried the story with such grace, such class, such innocence and reverence and vulnerability. It's hard, and I know she talks about this a lot in her interviews. It's very hard, I think, as a Black woman to get these vulnerable roles of like, we don't have it all together. Hollywood always thinks we have it together, or we have to push through or overcome or rescue or do something. But I felt like it was good for her to not have it figured out through most of the film. And even at the end, when she decides to take Matilda in, I still think they were going to just try to work it out. But Miss Honey's story was absolutely beautiful. That is one thing I loved actually more about the musical than the original movie, because the original movie, Miss Honey was, everyone's favorite teacher. We knew her story, but they didn't go into deep depth. I felt like this musical went far into her backstory. We saw Miss Honey's mother carrying her, and we found out that Miss Honey's mom died after giving birth. And of course, her dad, Magnus, died, and the whole thing of Miss Trunchbull doing it. But I thought that this story being introduced through Matilda's eyes was interesting, that she was telling Mrs. Phelps this story on top of her band. And looking at it, I'm like, I think that's Miss Honey's backstory, because we see these Black parents and things like that. And then when Matilda tells the story at my house, she's like, wait, it's your story. I just had this credible mind that I was making it up, but it's your story. And she's like, yeah, like she's my wicked step aunt, and she's evil to me. And she did all these awful things. Like she said, she gave her a bill when she became a teacher of all of the itemized things she paid for her as a child when she took her in after Magnus died and everything. And I'm like, man, Miss Trunchbull was, who gives a kid? I mean, well, she wasn't a kid, but who gives a teacher? Y'all know teachers don't make anything. How you gonna give a bill to a teacher and say, yeah, so this is all that you owe me, right? So remember that time I let you eat? Yeah, you owe me $5 for that, and you owe me $6. Well, well, it's in London, so it's pounds, right? You owe me 6 pounds for this, all these things. And I'm like, man, Miss Trunchbull was worse than DTE or something. This woman is ruthless. My goodness. But her story was so beautiful. And Lashana did magnificent. I hope she gets recognized of some sort, maybe MTV Kids Choice Awards, some type of people for best um, like child well, not child actor, but in a family role, something like that. And bravo to all involved. I just want to say about range. Um, I don't think Black women actors often get a chance to show their huge character range. And what I mean by character is that they literally can put on another costume and you totally forget who they are. Miss Honey, Izogi, I completely forgot that that's Lashana. And like I said before, I wasn't aware of her work before Woman King. So I look back and I'm like, man, she's been, double, the 007, and then before that, Maria Rambo and Captain Marvel. But Izoki and Miss Honey are so opposite, but she disappears into these characters, and it was so well done. And I really hope that she gets her flowers. I really do. I hope, I know the Golden Globes came out. I think she was snubbed for supporting actress for Woman King, but I hope she gets something for Matilda, or even maybe Oscars or something like that for Woman King, because she did so magnificent. And I'm thankful to her for showing that Black women can be other things than just strong. You can be a strong warrior and carry and train and be ruthless and a savage, but then you can also drop that off at the door and become this bird-like, just sweet nurturer of children, and sweet and vulnerable and willing to just let down your guard and sing these beautiful songs around children. It's very inspirational. So bravo to all involved. I would say go watch the film musical and let me know what you think. If you liked it, was it better than, if you saw the stage musical, was it better than that? Did you want a little bit more? Was it dark, like I said, or did you like that version? Let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Till next time, bye.